it's time to do a big cooling loop update video, and it's kind of been going on for the last year. So let's get into it. All right, so let's roll back the calendar a little bit. Beginning of 2025, I started talking about and making videos on the 3.2 stroker build. It's still something in the future, but it totally got put on the shelf on the side because I got contacted by 034 in March of 2025 to, hey, we want to get you on the NDA for the stage 3 flex fuel port injection file development, stage 3 tuning. Okay, awesome. Well, I don't have the time to build a motor and figure out how to wire in port injection to the Cyvex and get all that running and then doing the tuning for it. So, okay, great. Let's, I was totally fine putting the stroker build on pause. That was fine. Ultimately, if I put a stroker built motor into the car on the current software that I was on, what would that have done? Nothing. Not nothing. But I still would have had the bottleneck of not having the fueling and the proper tuning and the proper software for it. Which, okay, that's fine. But what do I want here? Do I want to be able to run the Magnuson fully or have a built motor? Well, I kind of want to run the Magnuson on, E85, no boost limitations, no airflow limits, that MAF of 1389. Way more excited to get that removed and done properly than having a built motor at that point. At the same time, and I've been interested in this for years, because the way I've seen it is like this pocket of space here, I was sure I could fit a bigger tank, maybe an ice tank. Like, I really wanted to do an ice tank. And so I did. I built one, fabbed it up with cardboard, modeled it, cut out all the pieces of aluminum. I don't have the skills to do TIG welding at this point anyways. So a friend welded it up for me, put it in the car. And so that went in the same time as we got going on the port injection tuning. Ice tank though. Josh, you've never talked about an ice tank, and this is 2025. But you've had an ice tank since then? I did. Kind of learning off the stroker motor. I kind of wanted to have more follow through on either a modification before posting about it to see if it actually did any good, or to tell, hey, this is what I did and it didn't work. Tried something, and that's okay. So I did have an ice tank, made one, and tried to run it. And it worked, but it didn't work the way I thought it would. I think a lot of us, and myself included, if I were to guess that I had an ice tank, if someone had an ice tank in their car, in a supercharged car, or air to water, intercooled car, I would assume that they'd pack that sucker full of ice and they'd cool their loop right down, and man, they would have like 0 degree, maybe 1 degree Celsius water. So their intake air temps must have been like that cold too. Not the case. What ended up happening is I'd put ice in the tank, and I would have my intake air temps would be, I'd fire it up. I have the logger on. Excuse me. I'd have the logger on before I even got started. Before I started the car with the 034 SPI app, I'd have that up on my logger on my screen, and I'd be able to see the live IATs, and they were the same as ambient. And so that was cool, but it was no same temperature as ice or ice water for that matter. But that was kind of critical because it was cool, because then what kind of ended up happening is the calibrator that I was paired with at 034, I would have a log into them. So on the on the fastest days we were working through it, he would have a new file or files for me in the morning. I would load them up, go run the car, get the third gear pull, log it, send it back to him. He would review it. By lunchtime, he'd have another file for me, another revision. Flash that, go, send him the log. And then before supper time, he'd have another file revision for me, log that, and yeah, I'd send it to him that night, and he would usually, and then he would have that for the next morning, already have a revision for me when I woke up. So 3 revisions a day, three plus logs a day. So that was working really well. But as awesome as, like, I can go run the car and put my hand on the Maggie, there's no issue. It's not like the stock blower guy, where I remember where, you know, we'd go run the car, turn the car on and just drive normally. I'll put your hand on the blower after and it would scald you. Like, it's just so much heat in that sucker. But this one, not the case. The casing anyways, but the loop and the water, you know, with the system that I had last year. So recap, I had the Merc Racing heat exchanger. I had the CWA 100-3 pump. I had the little Magnuson reservoir as a degassing bottle, as its own coolant reservoir. The Magnuson piping configuration. But yeah, that was it. So that's what I had before. And so on that, I would have, say I was driving around and it was 20 degrees out, I would easily have, if I was on the highway, so great airflow across the heat exchanger, no on off the throttle, no slowing down, speeding back up. My intake air temps, once everything was warmed up, would be 20 degrees over ambient. 20C ambient temps, did I say that right? My intake air temps would be 20 degrees over ambient. So my ambient would say it was 20 degrees Celsius, I would have 40 degrees Celsius IATs. And then, you know, it got worse, same as stock blower things, when I would, you know, drive the car, park it, stop it, and in the garage it's nice and insulated, so all that heat would just stay in the engine bay, say after I did my morning log for 034 for the stage 3 file development. So because of that, originally, that heat soak would just kick in, I'd fire up the car, then, and this is back when just divorced reservoir, no ice tank, no nothing new yet, I would have, you know, 50, 55 degrees intake air temps. They'd eventually cool down and, you know, but it just heat soaks just like a stock blower that way too. So now back to May 2025. Ice tank is in the car. We're doing the port injection stage 3 development and doing these multiple logs a day. That's where the ice tank worked well, because it didn't really ice the blower down. It was a temperature reset. So just like when we fire up the cars normally, intake air temps are the same as ambient. The water heats up over time and it settles out at, you know, most of the time I think a lot of us stock blower guys had 5 to 10 degree intake temp, if 5 to 10 degree over ambient intake air temps. 20 degrees ambient, 30 degrees intake air temps. But again, yeah, start at 0 or start at the ambient temperature. That's how it would go. Well, that ice tank just worked as a reset. I would put ice in, cool the loop off again. I wouldn't have to run the car. You just grab the door handle, it'd kick the pump on, do the whole car's priming sequence with the low pressure pump, the throttle body, and the cooling pump, and whatever else it does as well. I know those ones. And so I'd just be able to circulate the loop, cool the water down, drain off the extra, maybe put more ice in, get my intake. I had a meat probe in there so I could get a live temperature readout while I'm icing it down. And I could get that water down to 0 degrees, 1 degree, 2 degree most of the time. Turn the logger on, fire up the car right then, and I'd have the same temperature as ambient on my intake air temps. But that was sweet. It was my temperature reset. So then I'd be able to make a pull, not have that heat soak from an earlier log that morning, come back, park it, send the log off, wait for another revision, get another revision. If it was that day, bring out some more ice it down again, reset my temperature, but never get this freezing IATs. I never had, below ambient. But that was critical. That kind of accelerated and was able to move us through the tuning process a lot quicker and get good data. If any blower has good intake air temps and they can make better power and they can get a cleaner log, shouldn't have knock, less knock. On my case, there was none. I was happy. So yeah, everything's just gonna run better if you got cooler intake air temps, right? So that was a good thing. So then once tuning was done, I don't even know how many logs I sent off and revisions, but it was a lot. So it was a very effective tool during that process. Then fast forward to the Tuner Bash 2025 video. I took it to the track. It was, hot for Edmonton. It was 26, 28 degrees that day. So I was excited to see. That was kind of the test as well. Like, was I going to be able to mitigate, the staging lane, idle, or are you waiting 20 minutes to get to the front of the line to do your pass? And I found out no. Like, the ice advantage was gone a couple minutes into just idling up there. The tank was just small. The divorced reservoir was the size of, this or so. The ice tank, I've got it kicking up on the shelf, buried there, but it was, I think I measured it as about 2 liters, 2.5 liters maybe. So certainly not like a trunk ice tank where you can pack multiple bags of ice in there, huge volume of water, huge thermal sink. And it was just a different way of doing it, right? Like I wanted a small loop. I want it built into the front. I didn't want to have hoses going all the way front and back. Not at this point anyways. I just wanted to see what an ice tank would do. Would it work? Would it work as well as we thought? So again, just testing, and that's why I'm feeding this back to you now. So this is good information. So the ice wouldn't last in the tank. It wouldn't keep me cold through all the staging lanes. I'd already be heat soaked. I'd be back up to, track temps were 25, 26, 28 degrees that day. I think my starting temps were, north of, I'd have to check, but I think they were somewhere around 48 degrees starting temp. And then like you guys saw, I'd have to get out of it, or my intake air temp safety. Thank you for 034 for doing it well, where I'd hit 3/4 of the track and I'd have my foot buried in it, ripping on it. The intake air temp safety was so effective that I basically stopped accelerating on the track because, it's doing its job, which is good. So, but that's also showing that even that ice tank in there, the little bit extra water volume, wasn't able to, allow me to do a full quarter-mile pass in that kind of heat. So I remember making that first pass and being pretty bummed. Like, what the heck am I gonna do? This is a total waste of a day now. Can't even make a full pass. Ate something, that helped. And just refocused. Okay, work on your short track today. See what else you can figure out about the ice tank and just get experience. So that I can make a better game plan for the private rental that was the weekend after. I think that's all to cover there. Then private rental day, world record day. Myself, multiple friends brought coolers full of ice. We chewed through a lot of ice that day. Every single bag we brought. Every bit of stuff that we could get from our fridges and freezers, and yeah. So me and my friends that day, we would get that, again, the water down to 0 degrees, but because it was a private rental day, I could basically go right to the front of the line, and I would still have, if intake air temps were at 25 degrees or 20 degrees ambient, 22 I think, they'd start to warm up a little bit. I'd still have such a great starting point for intake temps that by the time I ran it out the back, I was always finishing somewhere, it was low 60s to mid 60s for temps. I was really happy with that. The ice tank did its job. It did that temperature reset every single time. I don't know if many of you figured it out or put it together, that looking at the slips that day on the screenshots in the video, you could see each of the timestamps. I don't know if you paid that close of attention, but I left it in there in case someone was really being, you know, Inspector Clouseau about it. They, though each pass that day, once we got going, was a half hour apart. So iced the blower down with the ice tank, got that cold water in there, and then went right up to make a pass, came back, reset the car, maybe make some minor adjustments kind of thing, but review logs. But overall, that's the only reason I was able to make, I think it was what, 7 passes that day, which before for me would have been unheard of. I'd maybe make 3 to 4. The ice tank was definitely a helpful thing for the track, but again, my ice was all gone by the time you'd even make it up to the starting line. Even from idling it from the pits up to the front, a couple times we actually popped the lid off again just to see. No ice. So, and granted, I'll show you. Like, with it sitting right here, I had it insulated and stuff, but it's right up against that, just make sure it's on the video. It's right up against this engine coolant hose. So I had insulation and stuff in between there, but it's still underneath the hood, right? It's still, there's a lot of heat underneath the hood. But then, so in winter, and I went to the drawing board of, okay, what can I do here to really fix this? And I had other ideas for the ice tank that I made this time in Gen 2, but it was easier to do that smaller one as a bit of a proving thing first, because to make the Gen 2 is going to be a lot more involved. But one of the big bottlenecks on the Magnuson, and you can see it here now, it doesn't look like the normal Magnuson anymore up front around the belt drive area, because these metal pipes, you can see the corrosion, you can see the small diameter, and I can't remember now. And yeah, that's where it's going into the blower. Like, we're not I think these are 1/2 inch is what the inlets of that, where the water would actually be flowing. It's a 1/2 inch hole. And I mean, okay, let's also take a look at this too. So the water's coming in here, it hits this, has to tee, which tees are not ideal for any water flow. That's a huge direction change, not a nice transition. So right there, we're hitting a limitation. So it's gonna short circuit that way into bank 1. Then it's gotta tee, hit another 90, come up and around, and then, you know, go over into bank 2. Well, I started looking at that and I'm like, I wonder if I could get some 1-inch barbs welded on there onto the intercooler and really step up, 1 inch, 3/4 inch maybe, like how big could I go here and step up the flow into the intercoolers. So it looked like 1 inch. Bought a few different barbs, measured them up, and found ones that lined up with the holes and looked like they'd be able to be welded. Sure enough, they were. But around the same time, I was like, okay, I think I just got this feeling that, you know, a bigger ice tank isn't going to necessarily solve the problem. I think I need to take a complete look at the whole system here and what could be improved. At this point, I was looking a lot online, seeing what other supercharged platforms were having success with. That then geared me, and I don't know how it popped up, but there's a website and a whole company that goes under the name Department of Boost. I like that. So I started clicking through their website, and I implore you to do the same thing. They got a ton of data, a ton of really good information on there, like some solid reading content. It would do all of us a great favor. If I remember, I'll post that on the description here as well. So Department of Boost. So I started doing some reading and learning. So what they had found is, depending on the level of boost that your blower is making, your PD blower, you need to have a certain amount of flow, and you need to have a certain sized heat exchanger, volume-wise. For context, this is all in the supercharged Mustangs. So when they get aftermarket blowers on there, whether it's the Odin, Magnuson, Whipple, whatever, the VMP kit, you name it. So like, okay, so I started looking at what I had, and they kind of did a neat job of showing this is like the bulletproof, this is kind of your bare minimum. And I was below bare minimum. Like I think the volume of the heat exchanger, and this is no slight to Jose Merc Racing, I would 10 out of 10 recommend their heat exchanger to everyone still to run it. And me and him have talked about this kind of stuff even before making this video. And granted too, that I was on, I think the version 2, the Gen 2 Merc Racing heat exchanger, the one before he released the S6 high capacity one. S6 one was more capacity than the one that I took off this car, but it wasn't as much volume as the one that I ended up going with. And so because of the amount of boost that I was making, north of 25 pounds, I needed to have a serious upgrade. 3/4 inch lines, not cutting it. The CWA 100, for how much boost I was making, it wasn't cutting it though either. I think they had tested it as well, because it's a standard upgrade for like Camaros and these Mustangs as well. They'll run them, and it's an upgrade from the pumps that they come with factory. And they would usually see around, I want to say somewhere between 6, maybe 8 gallons per minute. So then again, going back to this Department of Boost website, reading a ton, trying to take in as much as I can, and then drawing out my loop, seeing what I needed to do, what I needed to change, how I was going to plumb the whole thing, because it was looking like more and more that I was going to need to rip out basically the entire thing, redo all of it, and start from scratch. And so what's also cool is Department of Boost has a heat exchanger that they developed. They're kind of end tanks, but it's a Griffin heat exchanger is the core. And Griffin, I guess, is known, that I learned at this point, is a top tier heat exchanger in motorsport. They've figured out the right physics with the depth of the heat exchanger, core size, passes. The gentleman, the team at Department of Boost has developed this heat exchanger, and they called it the Titanic Triple. And they had stacked it up against basically every other heat exchanger for that platform, tested every single one of them, and showed definitively how much better this Titanic Triple was. I started measuring it, I'm like, ooh, that's gonna be the entire grill area of my car. So, excuse me. So that's what I did. I got that and the Titanic Triple heat exchanger. I took the crash bar, not the crash bar, people call it that. It's the bumper reinforcement bar. It gives the bumper shape. It's gonna do nothing in a crash, that aluminum. The other thing, so then that takes care of the heat exchanger capacity. Another thing was, the flow. So out went the CWA 100, and I opted for the EMP Stewart pump, that big bad boy. It 25 gallons per minute. It works great against overcoming head pressure with intercoolers. Still massive flow despite that. And so I did that, put it in the same place as the CWA 100. Had to make, a custom bracket to support the weight of that one, because it's definitely bigger and heavier. And then started plumbing the loop. Tried to make it as efficient as possible. No T's, a lot of Y fittings or 45-degree bends. And if they were 90s, then they were full transition 90s to make a turn. The other thing that kind of I ran into with the ice tank is, just like my Magnuson divorce bottle, it's got a pressure relief cap on it. That was critical. That's what I also found with the ice tank. I had to put a little pressure relief vent on it. That worked well too once I put that on. I didn't blow any cores or anything, but it needed, that tank needed to breathe. But was also kind of a short sight on my behalf on the Gen 1 ice tank was I mounted it, the top of the ice tank was basically the bottom, if you look at it like elevation wise, the top of the ice tank was here, and the bottom of the intercoolers, so they were up here. So every time the pump stopped, the water inside the intercooler would kind of drain out back to the tank, and it would have to re-bleed itself. And it did fine, because the pump worked at 100% speed. I was cycling it and running it, and it would just bleed itself off and bleed the air out. But because it wasn't at the same height as the intercoolers, and the water level inside the tank, well, then I kind of ran into that issue a bunch. And that's kind of something then I fixed with this new upgraded loop that I've done this 2026 winter. Is in the original Magnuson kit, they came with a little degassing bottle that you were actually supposed to flow through. And at the lower flow speeds that our loops originally did, even with the CWA 50, CWA 100, that was fine. When you get onto these high flow loops with like an EMP Stewart pump, the philosophy and the direction changes. Sorry, not direction of the water, but the like how you plumb a degassing bottle in. So I'll show you. So this is the original one that came with my Magnuson blower. So now at this point, this bottle takes a slipstream. So if you've got the water coming along on a main trunk line, and then there's a little barb for it to shoot off, and the air will bleed up, and then it gets into your bottle and fills it up, and then it kind of trickles back into the loop. You have to do your barbs properly for that. The feed line, so when you got your main trunk line again, thicker line or larger diameter line, the first nipple that goes off to, or barb, whatever, that goes off to the degassing bottle should have like an orifice, like a limiter in there. I can't remember now if it was like a 1/4 inch hole or an 1/8 inch hole. So that is going to let the air and a little bit of water at a much slower velocity come up, bleed off, and then when it comes back from the tank, if the trunk or if it's going like if the water is moving through the hose like that, you want the return water to come in at like a 45, and the velocity of the main trunk line will kind of help pull that water in. A little bit of a Venturi effect, not crazy, but that's how you kind of accomplish that. That took a few revisions for me as well to get it right. And then also just to figure out how it was all gonna, get plumbed in together, where I was gonna put all these lines. I think even this one being an engine coolant vent line, being so close to the bank 2 lines, like the feed and the exit, I'm not in love with that. I may move it around a little bit or insulate this vent line a little bit. That may be heating up this one a little bit, giving it a little bit more heat energy than I want it to. I'm not exactly sure, but anyways, and also to hide and plumb these way bigger lines around the car was definitely a new challenge for me, where it wasn't designed for it, but made her work. It's also got great clearance around everything else. The other thing that I was running into is the original pipes went over top here. That was fine. I wasn't gonna have pipes up top there anymore. Certainly not big 1-inch ones. They were gonna feed it properly and tee that again. So I needed to split the line earlier to have it come in kind of in a straight shot. Less of a pressure drop, less of a flow reduction, less turbulence. And the other thing was, what's really nice about this kit is I can change this pulley in about, a couple minutes. Belt tool, get those 4 bolts off, new pulley slides back on, maybe change the belt too, depending on how big of a pulley change it is. But it's a very quick and nice process. Has been up until this point. That was part of when doing kind of like a whole new loop like this, the maintenance side and being able to work on it as well. Ideally, you don't want to overcomplicate it or make it harder on you or a tech or whoever is going to be touching your car. But anyways, the belt tool still fits in there. I don't have a mess of hoses up top or in front of this or getting in the way. And it's still a couple minute belt change. So that was another little win. And then I've got the top of the ice tank up front here. So it's not in the engine bay anymore. I'm happy about that. Feed the ice in. But it's a lot larger capacity. I've hidden it nicely, I think, for the most part. I've just got a little hole cut in this cap. I did have a cap on the original one, thread on and off, but this is so easy and pop on and off, and it's the exact same size. It's not popping off because it's also not going to pressure up because I've got that little hole in it, and that's just enough to bleed off a little pressure. If the loop makes any. And this tank now holds about 3 times more capacity than the Gen 1 ice tank that I originally had. And I've ran this again now this year just to see, did it work well? And so far so good. But yeah, so to recap now, so I did the 1-inch barbs, the bigger lines, proper degassing bottle. It's at the right elevation with the intercoolers now. The big down below, the EMP Stewart pump, massive heat exchanger. I changed over to an RS6 grill to get rid of that bar area here so I could have full flow across. So I ended up deleting a lot of stuff there too. I had night vision. That's gone now, so in the name of doing this for performance. So, and then yeah, my Gen 2 ice tank. So the first thing I did was stack it up against 3rd gear pulls. So it's great to do modifications to a car, but does it make any changes? Does the data show that there's an actual improvement? This is just 3rd gear pulls, me getting the car back on the road after the winter and seeing just with 3rd gear pulls. I did so many of them last year with all the tuning stuff for the stage 3. So I had a ton of different temperatures and different stuff to pull from. Found one that was pretty close. So now, last year, Merc Racing heat exchanger, CWA 100, ice tank, just filled with water though. And normal lines, 3/4 inch lines. So the ambient temperature was 15 degrees, 2700 HPA boost. It was a third gear pull. I went full throttle from 3000 all the way to 7300. Intake air temps went up by 30.75 degrees. This year, with all of the 1-inch lines, the Titanic triple heat exchanger, the EMP Stewart pump, proper degassing bottle, again, the Gen 2 ice tank, but again, just filled with water. Instead of 15 degrees ambient, it was 21.75 degrees ambient, 6.75 degrees hotter. Made that 2700 HPA boost again. Third gear pull, 3000 to 7300. IETs went up by 24.75 degrees. So 6 degrees less. That's really nice. That certainly is sweet. Then now taking it to the track. Again, same pulley configuration, no ice, just water. So this is the world record day. So, you know, best success I've had with the ice tank. Again, like I said before, I get up to the staging or into the staging lanes, check the tank, ice was gone. So world record day. Ambient was 14C on the world record pass. My starting intake air temps was 28 degrees. This is after the burnout, going for my pass now, and they ended at 67.5. So sorry, that was a correction. I said they would always end low 60s to mid 60s. It was up on the higher end of the 60s. 40 Celsius degree rise, 28 all the way to 68. Yours makes no difference. My first couple outings in the track, and torture test, because it was 30 degrees out. DA was somewhere close to 5,000 foot. World record day was about 2,800 foot DA. And so also thinner air, less heat exchange on your heat exchanger as well. Little fun tidbit there. If you're closer to sea level, you got more dense air, better cooling your heat exchanger. So, torture test time with this new system. Ambient was 30 degrees Celsius. My starting intake air temps were 45 Celsius, and they ended at 75 Celsius. So, only a 30 degree rise now. And wow, that was a huge win. So now I could actually make a pass in basically as hot as it's going to get in Alberta. And before I was kind of protective of going racing at that temperature because I hadn't figured out a way to reset my temperatures previous years or keep my temperatures low enough to be competitive in that kind of DA, that temperature. And maybe some of you are laughing in warmer areas than I'm in, where you're like 30 degrees Celsius, what's that? Basically 90 Fahrenheit. We're in sweaters at 90 degrees Fahrenheit, and I'm sweating out of every pore of my body because it's hot for us. Granted, we'll see, you know, minus 40 as well in the wintertime. So that was huge. 30 degrees Celsius over a quarter-mile pass, same pulley ratio. Not ideal track conditions that way, environment conditions, but what was cool then was like, okay, well, let's see what happens. Got back in the lanes. My intake temps were back at that 45 degree mark. I idled all the way up to the front of the line. They stayed at 45 degrees Celsius. So still 30 degrees ambient, 45 and my intake air temps. 15 degree spread instead of that 30 before when I was idling through. 25, 30 degrees. Then made another back-to-back quarter-mile pass. No cooling down, no ice, nothing like that. Got to the front of the line, did my burnout, made another full quarter-mile pass, and it was just a deja vu. It was the same pass, the log looked identical basically. Another 30 degree intake air temp rise, started at that 45, ended at 75, didn't hit the safety. Big win. Huge confirmation that all of this system coming together is really, really working. Something that's cool in my logger now that I see is that my temps come up for the first 1, 2, 3 gears, By number 4 and 5, it's just flat. It's full flat right out the back and doesn't rise. It's actually coming down a little bit. So that is amazing. Super happy with that. Thanks for watching so much, guys. We'll see you in the next video. Peace.
Yeah, I think these guys are gonna go fast.